Good morning, everyone. We're just going to give it another minute or two for folks to join us. Welcome to all of y'all early birds who are on time. Thank you.
Got my link. I just sent a message, Abby, that I didn't get a link, but then I got it.
Okay, good. Looks like you're here, so that's great.
I don't know why my camera isn't working.
That's okay. Oh, there you are.
Okay.
Why is mine not working?
It's okay. Unfortunately for y'all, I'm going to do most of the talking. We'll definitely have time for questions and Q&A at the end. We'll get going in about another minute.
Yes, we will send out a copy of the slides and also the recording. And we have a website too that we'll send, or a web page that we'll send a link to as well. So don't worry about like taking excessive notes. You will get a copy of all this.
Okay, well, let's get going. Thank you everyone for being here. I know that this is an exciting information, hopefully. And we are thankful that you're here to learn more. I'm Abby Garrison. I'm the Vice President of Community Investments here at United Way. And then I've got Elle Scarborough here with me too. She's our Venture Forward Coordinator who's helping me just keep track of things today. And we'll be communicating with y'all afterwards. Like she said, we're definitely going to share all this information with y'all afterwards. We have a new webpage too on the United Way website that's been stood up, and also we'll be having stuff added to it throughout the next several months. But yeah, so we will be sharing all of this. So as far as what we're hoping to accomplish today, today's really about information sharing. Many of y'all know that our grant process has been transitioning for several years. And we're going to review some of that, what we've been up to and how we got to here, and then share with you guys as well, looking forward what the new structure is for our grant making cycle for next year. So one kind of point of clarification for those of y'all who've been with us over the past several years, you know that our calendar year, our fiscal year does not follow the calendar year, that we are a July to June fiscal year. And so we call there's no good way to do this, but we call our years by the second half of that year. So the 2023 grant cycle, which will launch this coming January, will cover what we call the 2023 fiscal year, which is next July 2022 through June of 2023. So that, even though it sounds like 2023 cycle is way far in the distance, that's actually the one that y'all will be applying for this coming January. So, yeah, so I am gonna just kind of, like I said, unfortunately for y'all, be talking through a bunch of this stuff, but certainly feel free to put questions in the chat. I will try to keep an eye on those, and if I somehow miss them as I'm going through, we have plenty of time at the end. There's not, the content does not fill up the entire amount of time that we put on your calendar, so we'll have plenty of time for Q&A. So let's get going. Let's see. So a lot of y'all know us, but I am assuming, just based on the attendance here, that some of y'all might not know the United Way very well. So I wanted to just start with our values and kind of where we're coming from as an organization. And, I will get into more details here, but, our grant process has been under transition now for 4, pushing 5 years. and really it's all about the reason that we undertook this transition is really about impact. As you can see right here, one of our main values is that our organization is here to drive impact in the community and to be a team player with you guys. We're here really to support the work that y'all are doing, really trying to hold ourselves accountable, also hold our partners accountable and the community that we serve. And then related to this process, this grants process, this redesign, really kind of have leaned in over the past several years in particular around the last two values here around learning and pushing and trying new things and not being afraid to innovate and trying to just do things better than how we've done them in the past. So those 5 values there really kind of are the foundation of everything that we do at United Way, and really hope that it informs the way that we work with you guys as well. So, would have to share the obligatory vision and mission statement. I think that this is so important just to actually articulate to folks who might not know us very well what we aspire to do here at United Way. And basically, we are trying to bring folks together so that we can have a community where everyone can achieve their full potential. And the way that we do that at United Way is specifically through the lenses of education, stability, and health and well-being. Research tells us, as well as years and years and years of doing this work, that if we can kind of invest in and undergird those 3 kind of foundational pillars of a person's life, that those are what's needed to help them achieve their full potential. And then specifically, as far as our mission, we exist to help unite people and resources. We're here to kind of be a matchmaker, if you will, a facilitator, a convener, and just make sure that the resources that are in our community or that our community needs and we need to go help find are matched up with organizations and people who need them for a stronger community. So as far as our team structure, I definitely wanted to take a moment and share this with you guys, mostly because we have made some changes over the past quarter in particular. So as we were looking at how we were going to roll out this new grant making structure, our internal structure was something that we looked at really intently around how it can better support our work. And what we came away with was just basically a streamlining of how we're organized internally. So our community and corporate engagement group that's led by Monique Burke, that is the group and that finds resources, that raises dollars, that raises volunteer people, that goes out and writes grants. It's all about the kind of fundraising as well as community and corporate engagement. Then we have our finance and ops team, which many of y'all who've worked with us before know very well. They are the ones in charge of actually stewarding the dollars and the resources that the CCEM team finds. So that's led by Susie Anthony. She's our Vice President of Finance and Ops. And then lastly is my team. So it's the Community Investments team. And we are the group that has the privilege, frankly, of helping figure out how to invest and deploy those resources. So under that umbrella are several different groups, including the grant making that we're here today to talk specifically about. So our community investments, that's our lingo, community investments, as well as our data lab and venture forward, which are all about being a community resource for you guys, our advocacy efforts, as well as community programs that we run or facilitate in-house, such as 211 information referral, our involvement with the Building Stable Lives program, and just various community programs as well. So that's how we are organized, and it's really all about aligning our internal resources to support impact and our mission and vision. So looking back, I've alluded to this, but we are at the tail end of a big transition. We are, I do want to start here though with our footprint, because we get asked this a lot, and frankly, it's a little confusing. We have a 6-county footprint. We have for years, and we will continue to have a 6-county footprint for our grant making and our programs. That is organized into 3 different investment committees. Because as you guys know, the dollars that the CCM team raises, we want to make sure that the donor intent is secure there, and where those dollars get raised is where those dollars get invested geographically. You'll see in the next slide how that breaks down, but Hamilton County is by far our biggest fundraising as well as investment focus. It's where the bulk of things happen. But then we also have a Sequatchie and Marion County committee and North Georgia committee, which is constituted by Dade Walker and Catoosa County. I just want to reiterate this, this is where we have been investing for years, and this is where we will continue to be. The confusion often arises because 211, which we also manage, covers a much broader territory. And we often get questions from outlying counties about whether we do grant making there, and we don't. We don't cover those. These are the 6 that we do grant making in. So how did we get to this big transition moment, and why? So let's see, about 5 years ago, we undertook a fairly elaborate, almost year-long process, driven by lots of y'all, driven by community members, and driven by our board and staff as well, to shift from kind of the old model of United Way grant making that was referred to as allocations, where whatever the dollars came in, they kind of got divvied up amongst a fairly static group of nonprofit partners. So that's the kind of old model, to the new model that's very focused on driving impact. And, not to say that the two are mutually exclusive, because they're certainly not, but wanted to, I think we all just wanted United Way investments to be a little bit more nimble and a little bit more dynamic as far as being able to kind of pull different levers and invest in different things that we had not been able to traditionally. So we went through a whole year-long planning process, facilitated by our partners, Bridge Innovate, did lots of design thinking, community input sessions, and basically redesigned the whole process. And the end goal, which is where we're headed to this January, was to get to a place where our community investments could be more impactful, more open and inclusive, more competitive, and also driving more collaboration. So we embarked on a 3-year transition plan, where the past 3 years, our grants have only been available to existing partners. And every year, without getting into all the details, because there were lots, they could either, many of y'all could either opt into the competitive pot, or you could take your traditional allocation, and it got stepped down every year. So the pot of allocations got smaller every year, but the pot of competitive got bigger every year. So it was kind of like you could take your chances opting into competitive and maybe be eligible for more dollars, or you could take your given amount, and that was good too. But the idea here was that we just left lots of room for individual organizations to choose what was right for them at that given time, but also gave lots of headway, 3-year time frame for folks to transition to this new process. I'll also say that this is when we introduced innovation and capacity building funds. At any given time, any organization could opt in and could apply for those funds as well. And that's something that has worked really well and that we plan to keep. Without, you guys can certainly read this slide, but the past year has been interesting for all of us. I think that COVID has largely kept us, we've largely been on track with our original plan for this transition. I will say that some of the like community gathering and meetings have not happened that were the kind of part of the original plan. But we are still tracking right along with the calendar and the dates that we have always been aiming for. And so next year, you can see 2022 happens to be our 100-year anniversary. So you'll see some fun celebration there. But also in January is when our competitive app launches to everyone. So that is where we're headed. And that's what we're here to talk about. You're probably wondering, how many dollars are we talking about? For those of y'all who are new to the United Way grant making, this is just a kind of breakdown of the past 3 years of the dollars that went out through this grant making process. You saw on that previous slide that dollars went out through other ways or through community programs that we run. But the grant making pool this current year was about $3.5 million. There was an additional kind of 600,000 on top of that was designation dollars, which we'll talk more about in a second. But as far as what was kind of on the table up for grabs, it was $3.5 million. And we, this is a good time to talk to those of y'all who are new that, you know, our model is interesting. It's different from a foundation in the sense that, you know, we don't have a corpus that we're just pulling annual draws on. We do have an endowment that supports our general operations and admin. But as far as the dollars that we grant out every year, our team has to go and raise those every year. So essentially, this coming year, we will be granting the dollars that we're raising in campaign right now. So it's always a little bit, you know, we certainly can forecast and think and have gotten pretty good at that and think that the dollar amount will be about the same next year. But, you know, you never know. And we certainly know that it's an interesting economy right now. But that's how it's broken out the past 3 years. And we anticipate it to be similar this coming year. Another thing that's different about our grant making at United Way from many foundations or government grants is the way that the investment decisions are actually made. So at I mentioned the 3 committees. So each of those 3 committees is in charge of reviewing the applications, and they're made up of volunteers from those communities. They're in charge of reviewing every application that comes in. They are in charge of having follow-up questions and in some cases site visits. And then they are a kind of subset of all of the evaluators are in charge of actually making the funding recommendations. So from a staff standpoint, we really view our team's job as facilitating that process, making sure that it's clear and transparent and as easy as possible for those investment volunteers to do their job. And we certainly know we train them. It's definitely, we have many people who've been doing it for years on that committee and are looking to add people to it. But that's a hallmark and something that makes our process a little bit different. They make a final recommendation that goes up to our board of directors. And I'm not aware of a time in which our board has not taken their recommendation as the kind of final allocation of the dollars. But this is just showing you the kind of demographic breakdown of who all's in that pot of volunteers. It's about 40 people this past year. I think we're going to grow that this coming year, or we are going to grow that this coming year, but it's about 40 is what's reflected here. Also, looking back at this current, the grants that are going out the door on a monthly basis this year, this is how those dollars that 3.5, or in this bucket, it's $4 million because it includes allocations. This is how the $4 million got split up. So you can see in the first graph, it's the type of grants that went out. So the impact grants, that's the blue, that's the competitive application that people opted in to apply for. The traditional, which is the orange, that is the traditional allocation model. So that was the step down allocation that some organizations opted for. Designations are in gray. Those are donations from donors who have been designated to a specific organization, and those have always been above and beyond dollars for us. They're not included in our community investment. Kind of the allocation of that is not something that the committee determines. We just honor donor intent there. And then the last two would be the yellow and the light blue are our innovation grants and our capacity building grants. So those are smaller, but also I think a crucial piece of that pie. You're probably also wondering amongst the kind of focus areas, where did the investments go? And you can see almost half of the dollars went into projects and organizations related to children. A big chunk went to early childhood, so specifically, before kindergarten, and then an even bigger chunk went to lots of different programs that support kids out of school time, youth enrichment, just leadership development type of stuff for kids. And then about 30% went into stability related programs. So when we say stability, we really mean financial and household stability. How do we, kind of keep a house and a household in a stable situation? That could be homelessness, that could be financial literacy, that could be, coaching, all sorts of different things about making sure that the house is financially stable. And then the last bucket would be health related. So about 20% of our investments went into things related to ensuring either quality or access to healthcare. And then lastly, you look at it by the geography. So those are the three different committees. And again, that chart is really dictated by where the dollars are raised. So where do we have big campaigns? And a lot of this is driven by employer campaigns and where employees are based. So Hamilton was by far the biggest. Next would be Northwest Georgia. And then our smallest, but also meaningful, is Marion and Sequatchie County. Here is a list of, just for those of y'all who are new or who are wondering, of all of the funded agencies from the past year. So again, you guys will get the slides, just if you're curious, and they're all on our website, and several of them are actually featured in our annual report that's live right now. So here's what I'm sure most of y'all are here for. You're probably like, okay, enough about the past. What is coming down the pike for 2023? So let's get into that. Okay, so I mentioned to you guys that the dollars that we invest through grant making at United Way are raised the year before. So I share this slide with you just so that you know how we're out in the community and out in big employers raising the dollars that we're going to have to invest in you guys. So this is this is the way that so we're in campaign season right now. Our folks are out almost every day at a different company, working with different HR groups and employee groups, raising dollars. And the way that they're raising it is using this framework right here. So we are actively raising our impact fund, our catalyst fund, and our bridge fund. And essentially the impact and the catalyst are the two that we're talking about today. So the impact fund is literally the same name as what we've been calling it for the past 3 years, around the impact grant application. So it is really investing for big impact, for collaborative efforts, for truly kind of transformational work that we have a good sense that it works, and that the logic model is sound, and that it's more of your kind of like proven track record programs that that really have a huge impact. The Catalyst Fund is the way that we're fundraising for the innovation and the capacity building piece. So that fund is, that's for donors who really want to invest in things that are potentially new, potentially game changers that might not be proven, but that we all know that in the nonprofit sector, there's just never enough funding to try new things. And that's what the Catalyst Fund is all about. So it's about investing in capacity to amplify your mission and your work, as well as innovation to try new things and to try bold new approaches that may or may not pan out, right? Like that's the whole hallmark of innovation, is that if you got to be willing to try some new things. And the way that we're positioning this fund to donors is this is the kind of higher risk, higher return fund that if you're into that, that's where you should put your dollars. And then the last one is the bridge fund, which I do want to mention to y'all, even though it's not a part of this grant making process that we're talking about. Bridge fund is probably what a lot of y'all know United Way for, which would be direct support to individuals. So for instance, this past year when the tornadoes hit at Easter, that's where the under the bridge fund is where that fund would live. Or the Restore Hope Fund, which is a fund that we raised and then have deployed through many of y'all to individuals to help them navigate the downsides of COVID and the bad economy. That's where bridge fund. That's what the bridge fund is. So those are the three funds that we're actually fundraising the dollars to invest in you guys in the community. And then lastly, I do want to make the point that we are making a concerted effort. If none of the three of those is of interest to a donor, then undesignated funds is always, you guys know this, is always an option as well. And then they can just let their dollars go wherever the need and the demand is, come next year when it's time for grant making to happen. So that's how we are out there raising it. Specifically, from your perspective and the grant application perspective, you will apply to Impact or Catalyst kind of fund grant applications, very similar to those of y'all who've been involved in the past, to the kind of three different kind of paths that we had before. The Catalyst name is just slightly a different name. So I also wanted to, while I have y'all here, share with y'all our partnership promises. So a ton of work went into this. I think that, excuse me, I'm actually really excited to kind of reinvigorate this model that we've had for years. And this was driven by lots of feedback from y'all as grantees and as partners of what y'all needed from us as a partner and as a funder. And so on the left is the partnership promises that we've drafted with lots of input from y'all. We will share that out afterwards. There's actually like a full one-pager write-up of what those are. But what I'm most excited about is that those promises lead really nicely into kind of an aspirational model that we're committing to here at United Way of getting on board with the Trust-Based Philanthropy Project. And that project, I'd really encourage y'all to check out their website. It is basically all about being a better funder, being a more responsive, trusting, supportive funder of nonprofits. And I can tell you, I've been on both sides of this equation, and I'm fully on board with the idea that nonprofits who are on the ground serving our community and our individuals on a daily basis, that y'all are the ones who know what you need best. We certainly have responsibilities as a funder to make sure people are delivering on their promises and make sure that that we have what we need to go out and raise the funds. But ultimately, the Trust-Based Philanthropy Project and the tenants there around supporting you guys as the ones who really know best how to do your job. That is where we're headed as an organization from a grant making standpoint. So I encourage you to check it out. And the partner promises basically feed into that very well. I think that it's where we've been tracking for the past several years. And yeah, I'm excited that it's all lining up. So all this said, you're probably wondering, okay, tell me some more specifics about the grant. So let's start with what's staying the same. So lots of it, for those of y'all who've been with us for a long time, lots of it's staying the same. So we're still deploying, our model generally is still the same. We're deploying funds next year that we're raising this year. We will continue to have the kind of three main applications. So that's the Impact Fund application, the Capacity Building Fund application, and the Innovation Fund. or excuse me, not fund, capacity innovation applications that come out of the Catalyst Fund. Our footprint and our focus areas, those are staying the same. Still the six counties and the three kind of focus areas of health, education, and civility. Our general timeline is staying the same. Again, those of y'all who were with us a few years ago know that we transitioned to this new fiscal year. It was a little wonky for 6 months there. We are staying on this fiscal year. January is when things will open. Our investment decisions, the whole process will take place over January, February, March, April. May is when final investment decisions get made from the committee level. Then they go to our board in June, and you guys get notified in June for July 1 for checks to start dropping. We are sticking with only 501c3s are eligible. I mentioned, we've gotten a lot of questions around community-based groups and or individuals. And individuals, we will continue to funnel through the Bridge Fund. That's where individuals get individual kind of crisis support. And for right now, we're just not set up to fund non-501c3s at this point. And then we will continue, as all of y'all who've been with us from the beginning to have done, we'll continue to focus on funding great organizations who are well run, who are operating with excellence, and who are delivering incredible impact for our community. We have for the past several years asked for collaboration, like specifically in the application, it asks for collaborative partners, and that will continue to be a piece of the application as well. We have for the past several years, with the past year being a bit of the caveat there with COVID, have hosted roundtables to hear from the community and to learn more about what's going on in our community. We also host mid-year, or not exactly mid-year, but during the grant cycle, shared learning for impact sessions where our grantees and us can get together and just share what's working, what's not. Again, those have been a little challenging to schedule for the past year, but we are recommitting to those. Those will continue to be a big part of our grant making process and a big part of being a partner with us in the grant making process. So, we very much hope and expect that people who want to jump into this collaborative, community-driven grant making will engage in those opportunities as well. And then lastly, our community investment committee structure will stay the same. I think I mentioned that we are gonna be recruiting some new folks to those, but it's the structure itself will stay the same in the sense that community members from the communities where these grant dollars were raised and where they're being invested will be the ones ultimately making the funding recommendations. So that's a lot that's staying the same. But there are a few key things that are changing. And the first kind of key and crucial one is that our grant making process will now be open to any nonprofit in our footprint who's working in the focus areas that we're investing in. Because of that, because we're opening it up from a logistical standpoint, it means that we're introducing a couple of new steps to the process. So the first will be some basic eligibility, almost like an online quiz, that will just make sure that indeed your organization, is in the footprint, is a 501c3, and is working on these things. That will be very basic. The idea is just to not waste anybody's time filling out an application for something that just from a pure eligibility standpoint is not a fit. Assuming that the organization gets through that, we're then going to introduce a letter of intent stage to the process. Again, really trying to be respectful of y'all's time, and as well as frankly manage flow on our end as well of applications. So there will be an LOI step where with a little bit more fleshing out of what it is that you would be proposing in the application. Again, just making sure that the strategies and the programmatic approach is in alignment with what we're wanting to invest in. And then once you make it through the LOI phase, you'll then be invited to the full application, which will be in many ways very similar to the application that we've had for the past 3 years. I do want to say that, and this is probably more applicable to those of y'all who've been with us before, but the metrics and reporting requirements that we ask of y'all as grantees, we're actually in the midst of doing a full review of that. That has definitely been a challenge for us from the standpoint of finding the balance between asking, it's always the perpetual challenge, right? Like it takes time and energy and frankly dollars for y'all to track and report on metrics and outcomes. But it's also something that we need to go out into the community and make the case to donors that what they're investing in is working. So we're doing a full review of what exactly we're going to ask of y'all, but very much hoping to land someplace that feels fair and reasonable to everyone. And then lastly, I mentioned to y'all that the designation policy. So designations, again, are dollars that donors donate to United Way. It's basically a restricted donation, right? In normal speak, that the donor makes and says, I want this specifically to go to this specific organization. So our policy currently has no fees associated with it. It's 100% pass through. And it has always been above and beyond the grant amount. So I think, and it's the other thing that has been a challenge that's under review is the fact that the only agencies who've been on the designation list to donors have been kind of a pre-selected group of the funded agencies and a few additionals that our board has approved. So all of that is under review right now. I don't anticipate that the designations will become a part of the community investment competitive pot. I just don't think that makes sense. But fees and who's eligible, we do definitely, I do anticipate some changes coming there. But that's going to our board in November. And as soon as we have clarity on that, we'll communicate that out to everyone. But again, that would be for next year's campaign. So really that's only for the 2024 grant making cycle. So all that said, we got a couple of fun opportunities coming up for folks to engage. For those of y'all who are current grantees of an innovation grant, we are going to get y'all together as promised, just for a kind of gathering of comparing notes, see how it's going, see what's working and what's not on the innovation grant side. Similarly, in November, for all funded grantees right now, we will be doing our shared learning for impact session. It's very similar from the standpoint of sharing what's working, what's not. If you need to make any kind of mid-year pivots, that's kind of where that happens. Both of those are open to currently funded grantees for those of y'all who fit into that category. And then for those of y'all that are new to United Way and our funding model, we are going to be having several community roundtables and would absolutely invite you to be involved in those. The dates for those will be coming from Venture Forward shortly, but that is happening. It's probably going to be virtual. We were kind of holding out, hoping that we could do it in person, but that's probably not sound at this point. But hope that y'all will engage in those as well. And then lastly, the grant will open January 4th, 2022. That's when the eligibility requirement piece will open up. And then things will kind of cascade from there as far as deadlines for getting through to the final grant awards in June. So Elle mentioned that we have a new webpage. And again, this will all be in the slide deck, but there is a new webpage at our website. It's /community investments. We've also set up a new inbox that goes to several of us. If you have a general question and you're not sure who to send it to, just email it to impact@uwchat.org and we'll get it. And then lastly, if you're not signed up for communications through Venture Forward, definitely encourage you to do that, because Venture Forward is how we are going to communicate this out to our nonprofit network. So with that, I am going to finally look at the chat. And do we have any questions in the chat? Nope. Okay. So anybody have questions they want to unmute and ask? No? Oh, there have to be questions. You're all just bored from hearing me talk and don't want to ask any more questions and hear my voice anymore.
Hey, Abby, I have a question. It's Stephanie Delioki. Hi, everybody. Once the applications released for first-time applicants, is there going to be a public question and answer session the way some major grants do?
Yeah, that's a great idea. We're definitely open to that. We're trying to figure out where, kind of how to calendar those, but yeah, absolutely.
Like one of my questions would be, without ever applying before, I saw that you had different categories of like early childhood and stability. Is an organization supposed to apply twice to 2 different projects within the category? Just some things like that, that without seeing the questions, I'm not sure how it's structured.
Yeah, no, that's valid. And we will definitely publish the RFP for this is probably, I don't know. I don't know if it's a good or a bad thing. It's probably like 20 plus pages as far as laying all that out. So that, yeah, I think that will answer a lot of your questions from the specifics. The RFP will have all the actual questions and the scoring rubric and all that.
Okay, great. Because I know that when they get that long, sometimes it's great to have those overview questions, answers for folks who haven't done this before.
Yeah, and we have it has a whole section in there that kind of lays out for those focus areas. It's not prescriptive in the sense of like we're only looking for this, but you know, it has some examples of types of programs or organizations that could potentially align with that focus area.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Stephanie. Good to see you.
Nice to see you too. I feel like a hermit, so.
Join the club.
This is Katie Hanners at Creative Discovery Museum. I do have a question about the amount that you can apply for the grants. Did you happen to say that earlier? I got cut off for a second, and so I'm not sure if there's a range for each of the 2 different category areas.
That's a great question, Katie. And no, I actually did not say that. It usually comes up, but I did not say that. So for the impact fund, we are not going to be setting a specific dollar amount for the impact application. I'll tell you that in the past, those have averaged about $130,000 each. Now, keep in mind, that's with a smaller pot of applicants. So, you know, I'm not exactly sure. That's the big question for us, right? Like, what is going to be the application volume and where are we going to land as far as the average grant dollars? We don't have a specific, we're not limiting it to answer your question there. So we'll just have to see where the applications fall as far as quality and ranking. And I'm sure it will be a very long discussion at that committee as far as you know, where that cutoff is of what gets funded and what doesn't. On the capacity and innovation side, the capacity, both of those in the past have been limited to $25,000. I'll be honest, we have not quite decided if we're going to stick to that, or if we're going to allow that to have more flexibility. I'm not exactly sure yet, but those have averaged about $22,000 in the past. And I do think that there will be some sort of limiting dollar amount there. We're just kind of we're doing research right now to determine if 25 is the right number or not. So I will know more about that shortly, but I do think there'll be a maximum on that one. A limit, I should say. What else? Oh, Sharon, I think you're muted.
Is that better?
Yes.
Yeah, I thought I clicked it. I have a question about the designated funds. Our designated funds increased this year, which we were, of course, not aware of when we made our application for the impact funding, which was a bonus for us this current year because we actually are receiving more than what we anticipated and budgeted for because our designated funds increased. Is there a way to state what we need as a maximum or a minimum from United Way to meet our budget? For example, if it turns out that our designated funds are a certain amount, is there a way to say, well, then we need this much more to meet our budget? Or do we just try to go with what's current? I know that's confusing, but we
No,
were
that's interesting.
surprised this year by a little extra than what we expected,
Yeah,
which is great, but
that's interesting. I mean, I will tell you that the way that we're tracking on thinking about designations are so confusing. Just 'cause
yes,
the timing of it, when they come in and when they go out, it's
right.
still like getting my head around it. Our thinking on designations is that designations is a donor service, and that
Right.
we do it because donors want, understandably, to know where their dollars are going, and that it's a donor service. Which in my mind and in our kind of thinking means that it's separate from the community investment process
Right.
in many ways. It's also, to your point, really hard to predict. They go up and down a lot. I mean, some of y'all have them pretty steady, but they really go up and down a lot every year. So our thinking is to keep it pretty separate from the community investment process.
Okay.
Just because it's so hard to forecast and to know, and the timing is just so challenging of how long the grant process takes, and then when the designations hit.
Right.
So to answer your question, I hadn't thought about the max and min thing. I'll have to put more thought into that, but I do think, generally speaking, that we're thinking that they are just different funding sources.
Okay. Okay. It sounds like I better stick with doing a impact as though we're not going to get any designations and reduce it a little bit with faith or hope. You see what I'm saying? If I think we need to meet our budget $50,000, then I probably would not request that whole amount in an impact grant. I think I would have to go out in faith that a certain amount's going to come in designated and ask for less. Now, if the award happens to come in very differently, can we pivot at mid-year and ask for like another 5,000 to get us through, if we project our budget? Do you see what I'm saying? Is there a way to pivot if our predictions are way off?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, so right now we don't have plans to have a mid-year cycle.
Okay. Okay.
So I would say ask for what you need.
Okay.
And
that helps. Thank you.
we'll go from there. Oh, designations.
Well,
So-
and to muddy the water, we don't know who those people are, which is always another, how do we thank people when we don't know? But my suspicion is one of our designators has retired. And so therefore, we probably aren't going to get that one.
Mm.
And so, having some community help from I would love for the donors to let me know that they've done that, but that's not happening yet. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I hear you. That's a whole nother rabbit trail, but
Right.
I will tell you that we're looking at some new technology related to designations that frankly, I think is going to allow us to open it up more.
Wonderful.
So hopefully we'll see.
And we're a small agency. This is not a big amount of money we're talking about, but it's crucial for us. Thank you.
I get it. Thanks, Sharon. Anything else, y'all? Okay, well, I'm gonna give you guys a little bit of time back in your calendar then. And Elle is gonna share out afterwards the slides and the links and all the information, the partner promise, all the various links we promised you guys. And seriously, if y'all have questions that just anything, big, little, seemingly important or unimportant, shoot us an email at that new email address, impact@uwchat.org, and we will be happy to answer it. Or if we don't know the answer, to find it or to consider it, whatever needs to happen. But just open lines of communication. Also really hope that y'all will attend the upcoming engagement opportunities. Stay tuned for more on that. And I think that's all I have for right now.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here, y'all.